The mind's speed dictates the context of reality. Why would a human being need to utter such a phrase? Perhaps it is because that human being has noticed that how life changes in front of our eyes and how life changes behind our eyes are different. I have divided this episode into a series of questions, eventually building to the title. First thing I have asked here, I've made notes of. Is in some sense, what is the mind? The mind, honestly, is semi-known, semi-unknown. There are things about how a human being happens that we know, and we can correlate it to other phenomena, which then renders as an explanation for it. We see creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere moving and making decisions and creating, and in some sense we say, all right, there's a mind there. There's a mind behind the scenes. Now, an unknown, you can say, event of mind, semi-unknown, would be how free will is even there to decide. You see, this world, we have been conditioned as human beings to look at it as if it's one world with characters and that's it. But what evolution has shown us is that an object became a subject to itself. And a subject is not existing like an object. A subject is experiencing. That means objects exist and subjects experience. What the mind is the primary primary space for intelligence to happen. Without a mind, there is no intelligent action, hence the term mindlessness. The mind is an ability of matter to be more than matter. Now, when I say, the next question I've written here is, what is the mind's speed? The mind's speed is, and this is a major point of this episode, really, the mind's speed is, it's like, for example, in front of your eyes, you see a race, let's say a sort of race between athletes, let's say runners. And the mind can visualize one of the runners running faster than the other ones. The mind's speed is a quality of our intelligence and man's inner realms, where reality moves beyond the laws of nature. You see, in front of my eyes, I'm holding a lighter in my hand, and this lighter is just, how would I say it? It's an object in my hand. Now, I throw this lighter in the air and I catch it again. Now, this lighter, it jumped into the air and it came back into my hand gravity, it can't escape gravity. Now, when I close my eyes, I can envision that my hand that is holding the lighter, throwing the lighter in the air, and the lighter just staying there and hovering in the air. Or I can visualize the lighter spinning, and then I can visualize it spinning so fast that in some sense it becomes like a sort of, fan level of speed. What I'm really trying to, point out to the species is that reality is not only objective, in its subjective dimensions it is malleable, and how it is malleable can surpass what we're seeing in front of our eyes. This even fits into the idea of conditional love and unconditional love. Conditional love is when the inner realms have fallen in love with the outer realms without actually seeing what the outer realms are. It's like somebody falling in love with the idea of something, and then somebody actually falling in love, with the reality of something. It's as if from one angle it is double-sided, from one angle it's one-sided. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that the human intelligence has an ability to speed up reality, and it has an ability to change reality. In front of our eyes, we change reality with our hands and our speech. Behind our eyes, reality is actually, here's the thing, if we divided two components to the human intelligence, and we were like, there's an existential level and there's an experiential level. In the existential level, outer realm suffices, but in the experiential level, it's not the outer realm. It's as if I'm trying to tell people that in front of your eyes, you're a human being in a cosmos, in a world. Behind your eyes, you are as if looking out through a window. Behind your eyes, it's as if it's very bizarre. I don't even know if I have the words to explain this, but it's like so in front of your eyes, first person point of view of the world. Behind your eyes, it's first person point of view of a space where the vision of the whole world can come and go and change, and in some sense various things can happen in the mind. You don't know, I have been one of those people on this planet who, when I became curious to figure out what imagination is, and really you come to that question when we wonder about what reality is, and we begin to see that it's multiple dimensions simultaneously functioning, rather than one dimension being so true that it is in some sense shackling all other filtering all other dimensions. It's as if a person goes to an art gallery where there's so many different paintings, and they just see the first painting and they're like, all right, I saw the whole art gallery, not realizing how many different angles there are and how many undiscovered ways there are to look at life that only the future generations will find. Right? This is the power of poetry. Poetry is in some sense pointing to the possible in a domain where the impossible has been accepted first. I have read poetry from the likes of Hafez, Rumi, and it's as if in their poetry they speak about the future, but they speak about the future through a sense of will. You don't know how strange of a feeling and an idea it is to consider that in the future there's this way that we're experiencing human life is not going to be here. I would say we are experiencing, let's say, humanity in 2022, pretty much outer world centralism, reality is a physical game with consequences. However, the physical game is being administered non-physically. You see, at some point, I would say this is before 2011. I wasn't interested in the idea of the soul because it was, in some sense, like it meant nothing, literally. But I would say what fascinated me was why there was anything here at all. I don't know how many people, I would be fascinated to find if there's others out there. How many people get fascinated by why existence at all? To me, I have looked at so many different things, and still, its bizarreness levels don't change. Materialism suggests that matter is creating the meaning of space. Immaterialism is a suggestion that space was here before, and the intelligence that we attribute to the biology, it's as if it is an extension of an intelligence prior. It's as if the roots of the tree are in a soil we cannot see, but the people nowadays are eating fruits. It's as if the person believes in the fruit. They believe in the leaves of the tree. They believe in the branches of the tree. They believe the branches connect to the trunk. They believe in the trunk of the tree. But when the trunk goes into the soil and they can't see the roots, it's as if a sort of belief that the tree doesn't have roots. And so similarly, it's the same sort of situation with human intelligence, where it's as if like we are considering the physical biological dimension. We're seeing the leaves, the branches, the trunk, but it's as if we're not considering that biology is rooted in a greater intelligent mystery, and the species hasn't even found the courage to wonder about this. When I look at what philosophers are doing, they are actually, it's kind of sad. The state of philosophy in 2022 is like, it's like, give the future generations a box of tissues. It's as if what's the word I want to use here? Philosophers in 2022 have been forced into submission. Submission in not wondering about that which the collective does not agree with. I will tell you, I do honor the status quo, but I also realize that the status quo, just like every other dimension, how would I say it? Like, regardless of who gives you truth or how you hold the world in your eyes, bewildered creatures stabilized from a singular reactive dimension to a multidimensional conscious dimension. When I say the mind speed dictates reality, I think that's what I wrote, right? Yeah. Dictates the context of reality. I am saying that just think about, as if for the sake of now, 3 levels or 3 types of speed. Okay? Let's say we have slow, medium, and fast. Okay, 3 types of speed. Now imagine that this creature evolved on a rock, and it holds a mind, and the eyes, ears, mouth, and the body is designed to have a sort of gravitational pull. It's as if the biological organism is drawing in all sensory perception to be able to stand in a world. I'm trying to say that if a person, and of course I should have said this probably earlier, right now, the viewers are limited, and there's a few viewers right now, but I'll say this: it's like the viewers have heard me speak about inner realms, outer realms. In front of your eyes, it's your outer realms. That's where objects happen. Behind your eyes is the inner realm. This is where subjects happen. When you realize that you're happening as a subject in your inner realm, and when you realize you're being a body in front of your eyes in your outer realm, and you realize that the quality of how an object is existing and a subject is experiencing is instantaneous, it's the same. When you realize that even though there's, like, for example, two hemispheres of the brain, it's as if it's one brain. Now, if your inner realms, if your, let's say your mind's movement, if your mind moves slower than your body, everything in life becomes a sort of revelation, believe it or not. It's as if this is a bizarre thing for me to say, because I don't think actually intelligence can be measured when human beings are like antennas. But it's as if an ignorant person, everything is a revelation. Pretty much novelty is what the mind wants, and continuity through an ability to experience novelty is what the body wants. I am saying that if your mind moves slower than your body, you experience yourself as the whole world. If your mind moves faster than your body, you begin experiencing worlds, multiple worlds. You know, to me, this is the difference between a futurist and a past worshipper. Fear slows down the intelligence and the speed of mind. Joy and playfulness activate the speed of mind. If my inner realms were moving slower, and this is the good thing, because I've given so many different talks, people can listen to my talks and they can get a sense of, like, in each talk what the speed of my inner realms was. When my mind moves faster than the body, when the inner life, the inner self moves faster, animates faster than the outer self becomes one world part of the many. It's as if behind your eyes you can have infinite conceptions of how the world is. In front of your eyes you have access to one finite level of it. Now, if the speed of mind increases, this is the bizarre thing about life. I am telling you, all of mysticism, it's really about the speed of mind. Pretty much perception in life in the context of reality is the speed of mind. Hear me out. Let's say the mind has a speed. If the mind stops, there is no reality, and if the mind accelerates to the fastest speed, there's no reality. That means if human beings were moving at a speed as fast as light, they would be inconceivable. And if in some sense the human being doesn't move at all, it is inconceivable as a sort of self-aware entity. So what I'm trying to say is that the speed of your inner realms, for many people, they have to figure out how it can be synchronized and organized. Do you know, for me, my inner realms move very fast, but in the outer realms, it's as if some part of my free will is moving in an inner world before moving in an outer world. You know? Think of it this way. The mind goes at a slow speed. When the mind goes at a slow speed, the person doesn't have expectations. The person is not a futurist. The person is in some sense just like being in the world. You know, it's as if those people who have slow inner realms, they go towards oneness. Because oneness is actually freedom from psychological responsibility. People don't realize this. They think it's just, a bliss of life happening at once. It's like, no. What true oneness is inconceivable, which is another way of saying you don't exist. That means it's like heaven exists, but because of its oneness, it doesn't exist. It's as if truth exists, but it exists as non-existence. So it's in some sense, I'm like that philosopher saying, hey everybody, non-existence exists. Who's gonna hear me and go shout this in the academic circles? Imagine in the future that like this is the point that gets the channel known. I'm always watching to see what part of the content I've created for this channel suddenly excites the mainstream. You know. If your inner realms move slower than the world, the outer realms is pretty much the source of your revelation, the source of the origin of your perception. If your inner realms move faster than the outer realms, that means how the world is being experienced behind your eyes changes way quicker than how existence in front of your eyes is changing. What tends to happen is that multiple senses of self arise, and in order for a sense of self to arise, it must have its associated world. I would say there is, again, no such thing as smart or stupid people. There's just people who their inner realms are fast, and those people who their inner realms, they rather go slow. It's like, imagine the whole species has to get to a destination, and some human beings are running, some human beings are walking, some human beings are sitting to find a car or an airplane. Do you know what I'm saying? People really in life are how it's like two dimensions, and the speed of how the attention moves in the moment suggests there's synchronization. I am telling you this people may think I'm simply speaking about it, but this discovery, this Mr. Within's discovery of the inner realm and outer realm relationship, imagination is like a creature that lived under the sea suddenly put its head out of the water. It's as if we have a foot into through the door of another dimension, and that is the ability of the mind, the privilege of the mind. Most people don't even know what their mind is, therefore they don't care for it, they don't consider it, they just leave it in automated, just like you have a heart that beats. It's as if the person's like, I got a mind and it's happening, right? The speed of your perception is based on your attachment to inner phenomena. So I'll give you an example. Imagine we have a human being born, and this human being starts at a neutral state. Let's say tabula rasa. Let's say that the child is born, and let's not be a Buddhist and say there's past lives or whatever. Let's just say when a human being is born, it's like an empty piece of paper. Now, based on the initial experiences that happen for the child, for this human being, a tabula rasian kid, based on how experiences happen, how communication happens, pretty much the human being's initial experiences and memory dictate a speed. Now, it's as if, imagine you're a driver in a car, but your car is growing and changing and evolving. It's as if when you got into the car, the vehicle could, was moving very slowly. Then, as you drove around a little bit, suddenly the engines of the vehicle evolved and the vehicle began moving faster. And then as you began moving, this is the beauty of life, guys. To me, I think a great life is a life where there isn't a fear of how fast it can go. You see, in the outer realms, you should fear. Outer realms pretty much balance is the key. It's as if we have bodies to remember that unless we're balanced, there will be suffering, right? But we have minds to touch the limitless, or to remember it as ourselves. I am telling you, dear listeners, have you ever thought that all the beliefs and ideology and thoughts you have is one side of a coin? Have you ever thought that? You will be fascinated at what are, for the sake of materialist ears, I will say, what our brains can do. The brain is like a gift from the heavens. It's like a warrior in a battlefield where suddenly this warrior loses his weapon and he's surrounded, and out of nowhere it's as if Thor's like, I got you, bro. And Thor throws his hammer, and this warrior now suddenly is gifted, with a celestial force. I have been giving these talks for so long that at some point I'm not looking for concepts anymore. Really, like if I was to say it's like the edge of, linguistic processing, pretty much the human being, the way the educational system we have now, let's say the educational system we have now was sped up. So imagine in 1 year of the educational system, a person learned they reached a certain point where it was as if the whole, like imagine 10 years of knowledge in 1 year of knowledge. The final realization of creatures that are using symbols internally to relate to reality externally. These creatures will realize it's self-proclaimed. This is the most bizarre thing, and I'm sorry to say this to our beloved species and all the academic institutions, but dear listeners, we named emptiness. And emptiness is contentless, but contentless doesn't mean nothing. Again, another bizarre statement from this episode, emptiness is not nothing. Emptiness and nothingness are different. It's all about the speed. I figured this out finally. I found out, this episode, for the listeners, I don't know how important it's going to be, but for me, guys, this is the greatest episode. One of the greatest episodes I've ever done. The speed of the inner realms. I am telling you, it's not about just, who are you behind your eyes. It's about how fast is perception moving to itself. And if it really goes fast, this is what I call advanced communication. And let me tell you what the greatest state of advanced communication is. Like, people are fascinated about aliens, like that's nothing. It's like, what's fascinating about aliens? Every human being has a different DNA. Like if we zoomed in, we'd all be aliens to each other. What's more fascinating than the invisible other is the inconceivable source of the invisible world. And the way that I have found for now how human beings can access this state is for our psychologies, because on some level people may not realize this, but it's as if there's a war of language going on the planet. This war of language is actually how ideological structures dictate attention. And the way that existence is being managed, it's being managed in a psychological domain. So what that means is after a person successfully exists, they want to successfully be. Like they want, like, how do I say it? It's as if the free will gets bored of its paradise and in some sense, I wanted to say escapes, but how would I tell you? You drove a bicycle and you're like, you went faster. You drove a motorcycle, you wanted to go faster. You drove a car, you wanted to go faster. You drove a helicopter, you wanted to go faster. You pilot a plane, and I should have said pilot a helicopter, but let's say you pilot a plane and you want to go faster. And let's say you're a really smart person on this planet and you realize how fast the planet is moving in empty space, and you consider that to be a vehicle. Let me find the exact number here. Speed of the planet. So it says Earth moves very fast. It spins, rotates at a speed of 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers per hour, and orbits around the sun at a speed of 67,000 miles, 107,000 kilometers per hour. So people who are driving at 50 kilometers per hour, the planet, where we are standing is moving 107,000 kilometers per hour. Yogis have been meditating in caves for stillness, but the planet's been like moving this fast. You know, this is like, you know, imagine somebody in a, you know, speed car. How would I say it? Like, let's say you work for a car company and you're trying to create the fastest engine, and you're like, yo, wait a minute, everybody's already experiencing, you know, 107,000 kilometers. It's like the atmosphere is the sunroof of Spaceship Earth. Eventually you reach a point where I would say the ability of the inner realms to move phenomena just realizes its capability beyond the outer realm ability to move phenomena. And you know what's incredible? Right now as I'm giving this talk, I feel how it's like a wave. It's like there's a current, I don't know how to say it. The mind has a current, a rhythm. If the world moves faster behind your eyes than how it's moving in front of your eyes, you become not just a creative person, but you enter Plato's world of forms. I am telling people, hopefully one day I will teach this, like I've been planning on creating these workshops. Like this might be the first year where I try to teach people how to use their imagination. In front of your eyes, you find contentment with your with the personhood, levels of personhood. Behind your eyes, you find contentment as the whole moment of being one presence of attention. It's like behind your eyes, you're a world creating a self. In front of your eyes, you're a self creating. Excuse me. I guess I could say this in 4 ways. Behind your eyes, it's unknown viewer being the whole moment of being and the awareness. It's as if the attention to life is a dimension beyond life. At some point, the human being has to be like, what is life? Not its promises, not its ideological structures. Just why is an unknown attention looking out through its eyes at a known world? It's as if the soul is the hand of the unknown. The mind is the space where intelligence happens. The mind reverse engineers itself into just being an instantaneous attention. It's as if energy and attention are being one moment, and that's where mind is. Let me see. The mind's speed dictates the context of reality. Reality is double-edged. It's about time the species accepts this. What reality is wakefulness. What the conscious waking state is a glitch in unconsciousness. Consciousness is a glitch in the unconscious. It's as if like we are a glitch of matter. We are an elemental, consciousness is an elemental glitch. But because the glitch took place, another universe can notice another universe. We are a universe inside a universe. People don't realize this, so they suffer based on the analysis of just one of these universes. You know, all those people who feel they have fragmented psychologies, it's because your inner realm is possessing your free will. Those people who feel bound and shackled, that's your outer realm possessing you. Attention is free. You know, nobody goes after knowledge to teach it. Like, I'll be honest, if you're a true seeker of knowledge, you don't care about what you pass on. It's more like how far can a species seize before it fades. You know, when will, you know, the mightiest human beings activate on the planet? When now is now. like the time. Somebody said it, the best time to do something is always sometimes I wonder, should I give a talk? And I'm like, okay, the best time would be right now. Yeah. Here. Let me see if I can keep giving the inconceivable. Right now in front of me is this laptop. Let me bring it closer in case. Here, I'll use this pen. In front of me right now, there's this black pen. I'm looking at this black pen with my biological eyes. That is one perception to life. So I am looking at this pen. Now, I close my eyes, and even though my eyes are closed, I see the fading image of the pen. So I see the pen, the memory of the pen. It's like before my eyes were open, I'm seeing the pen. Now I've closed my eyes, I am still seeing the pen, but it's as a memory. And this is so important to establish this as a feeling, because this is actually when a person closes their eyes but still sees. That sight is the inner realms. Now I can open my eyes. So imagine, okay, here, this is incredible. So I looked at this black pen, I closed my eyes, and imagine while my eyes were closed, I am seeing the memory of this pen. Now I turn this into a blue pen. Okay, so in my mind, I imagine a blue pen, the same blue pen, the same type of pen as the black pen, right beside the black pen, this blue pen, and then I'm opening my eyes. So it's as if when my eyes were open, I saw a black pen, I closed my eyes. Beside the black pen, I saw a blue pen. I opened my eyes, and now I am seeing the black pen, but I can also see the blue pen beside it, even while my eyes are open. Do you know? Now, this act of just wanting to see what you are seeing, it's as if to see, sure, sight is remarkable, but to see that which is seeing, some factor of the triangle of reality between self, world, and others, it has to go into unknown. Realms has the ability of novel creation. All inventions, all works of art were inner realm realities that journeyed into the outer realm successfully. Now, if a person closes their eyes, so now my eyes are closed, and let's say I visualize myself flying, or here, let me say I visualize like, what can example can I use? Let's say a person visualizes a soccer ball just spinning in the air. Our minds are a relationship with the extension of what we see. You know, people say imagination isn't real. And, you know, the bizarre thing is that which is looking at reality is imagined. A subjective simulation of a self separates itself as a defining point with the world, with the subjective world. It's like back in the day, subjects and objects were the same. Now, a subject has noticed it is inside an object. That means the mind realizing it exists. It's like the brain realizing it's happening as a person. Imagine this person wins the Nobel Prize, and everybody, applauds, and then the person's like, please also applaud for all the neurons in my brain that moved in order for this to happen. Please, acknowledge every cell of my existence. Oh man. We just need advanced teams to activate the potential of humanity. We need every human being fearlessly advancing towards novelty, which is the unknown. Novelty is actually when you successfully meet the unknown, you find the new. I'm telling you, knowledge becomes a boring game where you realize that just like an eagle that from the sky that can go land on any branch, a person can zoom in on one conceptual dimension of reality and everything gets cloned by that. You identify with the body, it's as if you see a physical realm and the consciousness is active that way. You can look at life as if the purpose of an object is to become a subject. This is really why, like, all those human beings in movies or whatever that, like in literature, that wanted to live forever, it's as if it's not an object that wants to live forever, it's a subjective condition of a pleasantness. It's as if, like, attention has found something to play with, and how willing is it to let it go, right? We have the word prophet, Prophet, as a declaration of a being that is bringing forth an answer. And then we can say, like, if a prophet brings forth an answer, what would bring forth a question? And I would say perhaps we could create the term omni-prophet, or we create a new word and call it philosophet. It's like, many philosophers in the year 2022, liberated, the year 2422. Questions are as beautiful as answers sometimes even more beautiful. Reality really can't have a truth because the act of self-simulation is the ignorance of the existential being. So it's as if right now, if I was a materialist, I would in some sense be an inconceivabilist. You know? That means it's as if the person has given up. They're like, all right, the periodic table is the only thing here. Everything else is, I don't know what the periodic table is doing. Yeah. Imagine a Buddhist, scientist saying, the periodic table is reincarnating. The mysteries of mindhood are upon us. And dear listeners, really, I have thought about what purpose can a microphone, that can potentially connect to a global stage have? And I've realized it's just, we either do something or we don't do anything. Two options for the human species. Either the species is like, all right, what we have is good enough, or the species begins to have a nostalgic feeling of its supreme deserve. It's like, what do you deserve? And then what does your species deserve? And what does the greatest effort of your species deserve? This is where I would say some people have a cultural honor, and then there's some people who have cosmic honor. The wise transcend violence. The foolish are possessed by it. That means you have 4.5 billion years of evolution on this planet, and a species has arose, and the species has realized it has a mind, and it's still like killing each other. Like, what the it's like the ability of our minds, the greatest ability of our mind is what the person deserves. That means when I look at people, I'm like, they deserve the greatest thing they can see, if they can see, if they have cared to wonder what their greater self is. There was someone who I had a chance, and this was sort of, how would I say it? I remember I just told someone who was suffering, that you have one lifetime to see what the best version of you, not the best, the most advanced, what the most advanced moment is, like what the most advanced self could be. Could the most advanced self be a collective field of intelligence? That means there is no life, there is no death, there's just a remembrance of, the unchanging. Because everything's defined by change. If human beings didn't, like, let's say tomorrow they had some sort of immortal technology, right? And all human beings had become immortal somehow. It's as if immortality means there is no ending. When there is no ending, then the beginning doesn't have a foundation to begin its value system. It's as if, let's say, there's people say, there's people with egos, and and the ego craves power. I mean, seriously, I'm pretty sure the train is louder than yours. Eternity is meaningless. This is why it's liberated beyond all a change. There's something here that is changelessly watching a part of itself change. You know, I am right now giving a podcast on the human beings requiring to have a global effort, planetary effort to build and to attempt and build an advanced civilization. But you know what's funny? Something that it would upset me, but at the same time, I don't know what I would make of it. That if something tragic happens, or something not tragic but intense happens on the planet, and this becomes so intense, it's as if an emergency situation for the human species would instantly make it snap out to realize the importance of why the whole species needs to consciously advance civilization. And it's like, it's like a car without a driver that the whole species has to push, until the person becomes conscious. It's as if you're not just responsible for yourself, you're not just responsible, for, let's say, those around you. You're responsible for the destiny of life in this universal sector. Do you know, it's as if the bodhisattva of compassion was an achievement, because I am telling you, the way the events of nature physically are designed to shift and alter our consciousness, it's as if there's something to life that is inescapable when there is transition and there is death. An advanced civilization will not fear death, they would study it. And when I say they would study it, as if there would come a point where all violence would be pushed into the future in cyberspace, there would be no violence on Earth, because all human beings have realized that they have an access to the dimensions of mind. And the dimensions of mind means that upon your physical flight in the realm, there is also your mind's flight. You see, the mind's destiny is very different than the destiny of the body, because the body is like, the sort of vehicle moving in the space-time continuum, and eventually it will just dissolve into nature, right? But when it comes to the mind is creating the concept of time. The mind is actually an intelligence that is prior to a concept defining it. That experiential level of presence has, I would say, an unknown mind of its own. Many people don't really, to me, there isn't really a lot of spiritual people on the planet. Let me tell you why. Because true spirituality doesn't mean you had an out-of-body experience. True spirituality, true mysticism was out-of-world experience. It's like 8 billion egos that have been uh, they've suddenly, this is how their world has started, where it's like in a forest of illusion. There's 8 billion eagles, just they've each on their own branch, of this forest. And then suddenly one eagle just flies a little bit higher so the others can see. And then this eagle shouts that we have experienced the forest, but the sky awaits. You see, we saw the good and bad scenarios of the planetary dimension. Now we require to wonder about the transition of the cultural entity on a planet to a galactic environment, right? It's as if let's say you're having guests over, and so you set up chairs enough for all the guests, right? And so let's say the human species has extraterrestrial guests in the future. And so before the guests arrive, the species must have a sort of acknowledgement of life being a revelation of possibilities, and the advantage of the mind is for us to have a comparison, have a reference point to compare to the origin of reality. What would a fearless and incredibly advanced species look like? In some cultures, they have the concept of God, a singular God. In some cultures, they attribute godhood to various archetypes, where there's like a god of life, there's a god of death, there's a god of, let's say, light, a god of darkness. And so it's as if a person does not fear the god of death, when the god of life never left planet. It's like 8 billion points of energy where the energy can be used for something. And we wonder, what could the energy of human existence be used for? It's primarily it's being used for itself. Let's say there's like 30% of the population is actually serving others. How easy is it, or how much of a challenge is it to find a way to care for the world enough to see how far it can go? You know how an advanced civilization happens? Pretty much skill levels in civilization increase to such a level where it becomes the era of geniuses. I would say maybe in the 2200s, maybe this could happen, or maybe later. Imagine humanity was a kingdom, and this kingdom had 8 million plus kings. Imagine a world where like the children are born, the moment they're born, they're crowned, you know. And so it's as if like the kings and queens of civilization, how, to what extent would they care for the advancement of the kingdom? Like sometimes it's just, I feel like I am watching a giant from a distance, you know. The advanced civilization is the future's future. I think there's a chance that I personally have this feeling that nature is such eventually, like at the end of all, let's say, conceptual conclusions, you just realize it's being in an unknown way of its own, and it's like the transcendence from the linguistic simulation or the simulation of thoughthood. How would I say that? When you have done all that you could, when you got to experience all that could be done, when you got to experience all that you were, and all that you got to be, and you experienced all levels of action and all levels of being, that means it's like, I would say, a wise person lives 2 lives at the same time. One life where the honest dimensions of life have a reasoning, and another where the person, instead of branding it, would just say it's abstract. Where will the eyes of a species lead us? After we have fully realized the universe is alive, there is no longer, it's like, there is no formula for a dynamic system. And it's just that consciousness has to begin trusting reality. When you trust life, you are trusting life in a way where it's as if, like, death does not exist. Because the manifestation of worldhood is life's effort. That means nothingness still exists. It's as if, like, religious people say God created, like, the vegetables and fruits, so we eat it, And so it's as if, why did God create empty space now? Nobody asks it. I've yet to see a theologian wonder about the religious interpretation of emptiness. If, this is why I think in the religious traditions, Abrahamic ones at least, they have this sort of game of submission. And it's important. Why? Because when a person realizes how infinite something is, they get humbled. Do you know? It's like an angry person suddenly met their future self, and it's like after years they weren't angry. And what the future self is how at some deep core of the human experience, it is being where it's going. That means this is the bizarre thing. If the whole experience of present human life is a simulation from its future, and in the future it is a collective being, presence, singular presence of being. It's as if oneness from the future is fragmenting itself in the present. It's as if time travelers, came back and said, human beings have got it all wrong. It's not going from the past to the future. It's going from the future. It's like from the future to the future. And the past was the bridge. The present was the rocket. Human life is not, the blessing of human life is that you have an outer realm, which is, you don't have to imagine existence. Existence is there. That's quite convenient. There's endless geometrical shapes everywhere to just, master your perception through. And I would say when it comes to the inner realm, you have the ability of world projection, but not just world projection, anything that one's intelligence, after internally viewing, can externalize. It's as if to truly understand consciousness, we must entertain the notion of dehumanized awareness as a primal source. It's as if imagine there was a book sent by God, and in that holy book sent by God, what was written in it was that there is no God. And so it's as if God told us there is no God, but it's as if, eventually, imagine what would happen to the psychology. A divine revelation of the absence of divinity. And that is what the material, that's what samsara is. It's as if, somebody's like, imagine it, I'm trying to, how would I share this? There is no one truth to a multidimensional event. When we are a self, we access reality as a memory of the universal sector. But beyond shapehood, what takes place is that one becomes a sort of invisible wind of intent of sectors of reality. It's as if it's like a universal being forgetting that it's a universal being, and then realizing it's a universal being, to realize that the reason it forgot it was a universal being was because there was nothing else to do. It's as if God was so perfect that it was like, all right, let me create an imperfection. And Adam's like, why, man? Why? It's like a creator accepting its own mistakes, and the self accepting that it's the world. It's like a religious person can, tell a philosopher God created the world. And a philosopher may ask suddenly, like, what is creation? What does that even mean? It's as if novelty is the spontaneous arrival of existence, of hidden existence. I thought that if a person just talks about an advanced civilization, like maybe an advanced civilization will happen. Everybody is a pilot of their attention and their free will in this world. Every person is seeing life in a way that nobody else is, and the compassionate ability to integrate the greatest ideas, to see what out of the greatest ideas is the greatest, that is a smart species. A species that reduce the levels of, it's as if like the more emotional our species is, the more wars there will be. The less emotional the species is and realizes the position that all human beings are actually, they shouldn't, it's as if like civil war in the species is unnecessary when, our true enemy, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's as if like all human beings are befriended by just the archetype of the human in like existence. It's as if like the victory of the future is so great that the present cannot hesitate. And even the past becomes an ally of contribution. Can you imagine, all your memories saluting you? As there comes this realization that the body dies in the world, but then the world dies into the real self. What the Atman is an inner connection. When will the universe bless itself? When will this universal sector advance? It's as if its physical existence, is this it? Right now, because there's a sort of, general materialistic conclusion on the nature of reality, philosophers are depressed. It's like to be a true philosopher, to get a PhD in philosophy, that's like, somebody who can, has been through like advanced levels of existential depression. Philosophy is the only academic subject that will give you so many different angles of how the world has been approached, that it's like, how can I tell you, philosophy is a force. It is just the inner urge of a creature to wonder about the edges of its perception. And to learn to honestly walk with the unknown, I think that's that's like the end of mysticism. It's like the person was like, I was looking for truth, but then I realized I was being it. And then it's like, I didn't know what I was looking for anymore because I was being it. There was nothing to look for. And then the person's like, wait a minute, so are you enlightened or not? Oh, man. Imagine the world leaders, realize that what their greatest grandchildren deserve is the greatest possibility. Benevolence creates sectors, creates a space for genius's arrival. I am telling you, there is a ridiculous amount of good ideas on the planet that are just hiding behind people's eyes. If we truly love our world, it's as if when you care for something, you care for the future of that thing. And when people don't care for the future of their species, it's as if they don't care for the world, It's like the person's like, I love nature, I hug trees, and I'm like, hey, how about advancing civilization? The person's like, I don't care about that, I just want to hug trees all day. It's as if, like, great, but it's as if you have an ability the squirrels and birds don't, It's like that must be used. People should have, just sit down, get a piece of paper, and wonder about how many ways they can see their lifetime. I'm telling you, it's like great ideas are everywhere. It's like when the person took the box off their head, the box of language off from their head. It's as if they realized it's as if they were in paradise before hell. It's another way of saying before you were unfree and had to find a way to free yourself, you were free. It's like existence it starts out of freedom. The nature of space is it gives freedom for matter to move. This world is built on freedom before storytelling, and experiential freedom. An instantaneous freedom. Like, that's the only freedom that should be looked for when it comes to the mind. When it comes to the body, freedom is like efficient strategy. I don't know what else to say. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. This episode has gone too long. Final points before I end off. Pretty much I'm saying the speed of how fast your inner life moves suggests if reality becomes multidimensional, if it remains dualistic, if it becomes singular, or if it returns to the void. I'm just pretty much, just taking this strategy where I'm like, where is greatness, but for the whole universal sector. What if freedom was born in the illusion, just to realize that's part of freedom? The freedom to be right, the freedom to be wrong, we value them equally. The freedom to live for life, or the freedom to destroy life. It's as if, how should we value them? It's just like the species is too smart to fight anymore. And now, instead of putting the attention on physical conflict, we take the attention, it's as if we treat civilization as a technology, we want the users of technology to advance before they actually get into advanced technology. And regardless of, how the writer's pen moves on the empty page, regardless of how many levels of life, like how much, like beyond even information overload, which is another way of saying that your mind is moving so fast that it's losing its own control, which is another way of saying it. Your mind can, like if a person cannot acknowledge the simplicity of the presence of the moment where their whole life is happening, their psychology, how would I tell you, it's like the fragmentation, like if a person has a very fast inner realms, in the outer realms they should in some sense move very slow. It's as if the more complex your inner realms are, it's as if more of conscious attention is going to how